Hey, it's Erica. Welcome back to my channel. If you who are new here, then welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about a YouTuber that's kind of controversial. And I'm going to be giving my take on why this person is controversial, and the person is Teal Swan. 1 second, I have to move the camera so you can see the TV, hopefully. Yeah, that's better. And she, if you don't know who she is, she's kind of like this new age guru, and she pretends to be a mental health practitioner, and obviously there's a lot of issues with posing as something you're unqualified for. So without further ado, we are going to be watching a video she's made about how everybody has multiple personalities. And if you who don't know, dissociative identity disorder is a real mental illness. So saying that everybody has this is, number one, it's untrue, and number two, it's very invalidating to the people that actually struggle with this. But before I give my opinion, let's watch it together. Blah, blah, blah.
Trauma includes things that we would consider mundane. It's a trauma to be born in our mainstream medical facilities today. It's a trauma to be weaned. It's a trauma to feel extreme jealousy when there's no way to resolve that situation when you're 6 or 7. These traumas, almost all of us experience.
So currently, she's talking about how trauma isn't necessarily always the most serious things like war and things like that, and it can be something that everybody goes through. And yes, that is true, but we also need to acknowledge that some traumas can be a bit more life-altering than others.
Almost all of us experience, and yet we don't consider them traumas. The problem is that if we don't have a way to resolve and thus integrate a trauma we experience when we're young, we must dissociate from it. Consciousness itself functions like water. Therefore, you can imagine the dissociation process as it occurs within consciousness by thinking about a river. If you're looking at a river from above, you can see that the larger river often branches off into smaller rivers, and each time this happens, there is less water available to the main river. At the moment of trauma...
And another thing that I've noticed about her videos, and also other people have noticed, there's a podcast that does a deep dive into the problems with her, and it's called The Gateway, and that is an excellent podcast. I listened to all the episodes twice, actually, because it was really interesting, and I feel like I was so blown away from all of the things that this woman has allegedly done that I needed to hear it twice to make sure that I knew what I was hearing. But so I really recommend that if you want to know more about all this, listen to that podcast. But one thing that was said in the podcast, and that other people have said, is she talks in this very slow, hypnotic voice, and it almost draws you in, and it's kind of it feels like brainwashing, and that's a bit creepy.
Part of our consciousness branches off from our main consciousness, just like this river. Our consciousness splits, just like the river does. It is an act of self-preservation. It's easier to comprehend how this process of our consciousness splitting affects us when we picture it in terms of how it impacts our personality. We have to imagine that by splitting, we fragment our ego. Now I'm going to help you understand this in a really easy way. I want you to imagine, as is accurate, that you have one body. But you usually think you have one personality too that kind of resides in and of this body and uses it. But when splitting occurs, that's not what's actually happening. Internally, your personality becomes split kind of like Siamese twins. So if you don't know, Siamese twins are conjoined twins. They share the same body, and yet they have two totally distinct personalities. We may have hundreds of these Siamese twins
and now, here's where she's wrong. There's no science to back up what she's saying. So basically, she's just saying whatever the hell she feels to be true, which, I mean, we may feel many things to be true that may not be true. Like, for instance, I personally am a very superstitious person, so I knock on wood to prevent things from happening. But that's not something based in fact. That's something based in something I just feel. But there's a big difference between me knocking on wood and her reporting that everybody has dissociative identity disorder, because I'm not telling people, instead of like seeking help, instead of anything else, just knock on wood and everything will be fine. Like, no, I just happen to be a person who knocks on wood, and it may seem odd to some people, and it is odd, but that's just what I do. But it's not harming anybody else, but her perpetuating misconceptions about mental health and about mental illness, and she also does this with physical illness too, by the way, is irresponsible. And note, Teal, it's not based in fact. And if it is, show me your facts, because anybody who's taken a basic psychology course is like, well, show me where you're finding this information. So let's keep going, I guess.
So technically they're all conjoined because they all share one body, your body, but each one has its own identity, its own desires, needs, perspectives, strengths, weaknesses, and appearance. For example, inside my body I can have an aspect of myself that's a warrior princess, one that's like a male war admiral, one that's like a tiny crying child, one.
And here's the thing, yeah, we all have multiple aspects to our personality, but there's a big difference between that and having a serious mental illness that affects your everyday life. And I feel like Teal doesn't get that. She really trivializes these issues and capitalizes off of them, and I'm sick of it. And at this point, I'm gonna shut it off because I feel like we got a sense of who this woman is, and if you haven't, then you can dive deeper into that rabbit hole, because trust me, there's a lot there to be said about her. But one thing in that podcast I talked about earlier, the Gateway said, was that she told one of her followers, like, so basically she has like people surrounding her and they all live in this commune together. So to one of her followers, she basically told her, without having any information to back it up. She told her, I can sense that you have cancer because you're such a negative person. And that's not what cancer is. People don't get cancer because they're negative people. And yeah, certain things you do in life may increase your risk of getting cancer, but ultimately, let's stop blaming the victim, because that's fucked up. It's ableist, and Teal needs to stop it. And Teal also seems to believe that if disabled people want to be able-bodied, they can manifest it in their head or with their energy. And it's like, first of all, that's ableist as hell. Second of all, it's not based in fact, Teal, because that doesn't happen in real life. It may happen in the movies, but in real life, sometimes if you're disabled, you're just permanently disabled, and that is absolutely fine. It's a normal part of the human condition. But what is not a normal part of the human condition is people like her capitalizing off of these things and promoting these false beliefs. It's not normal, it's not healthy, and it needs to stop. First of all, I think since she's not a mental health expert, and even her own experience with mental health seems to be very limited. Like, she passes it off as like phases she went through in her life, and anyone with a mental health issue knows that usually there are long-term issues that are going to stick with you for the rest of your life. And yes, you'll go through periods where it's better and periods when it's worse, but a lot of times issues like depression and anxiety and dissociative identity disorder and eating disorders and schizophrenia, a lot of those are pretty much lifetime disorders. And of course, there are cases where it's not, so I'm not saying for everybody it's that way. But for someone who only experienced that as a teenager, and she purports that she cured herself through all these like positive thinking and crystals, like, girl, stop. And she also, one of the things apparently she does on her retreats is she has people meditate, which is fine. Meditating, I have nothing against that. Of course, there are types of meditation processes that can be more extreme than others and can be more harmful, but like meditation in general is not something I would consider bad. But so she has these people meditate, and she has them visualize their death, and she said to people, try to get suicidal here for a minute. Now, who in their right mind would be encouraging people to get suicidal for a minute to do some thought exercise? Like, no, first of all, Teal, you have no qualifications to be doing this, and even if you did, you should know that any professional with any qualifications would know that you don't do that, especially in like a setting where someone may not be safe. You know, like, it's different if you're like surrounded by like professionals, and even then, just because a professional is doing something doesn't mean it's right. Like, we've seen that in the past with certain types of therapies that later we talk about as actually abusive practices. But this woman is doing this with zero qualifications. She just feels it in her soul that she's right about all this stuff, which is like, we can all be like that, but that doesn't mean we should be promoting our beliefs that have not been proven to help people. Like, just because something has helped you doesn't mean that's gonna be an effective practice that you should like force upon a bunch of other people. And I believe that's the real issue with people like her, like these fake new age gurus. Like, they first of all, they steal a lot of ideas from Eastern religions, but they don't even know how to practice them properly. So they just kind of like take it and put their own spin on it and be like, well, I feel this is the right way. And no. Because a lot of Eastern religions and their like practices, they can be helpful to people. And that doesn't mean they're going to be helpful to everybody, but when they're practiced in a way that is responsible and with people who know what they're doing, like, it can be good. But what Teal Swan is doing is not good. And again, I really recommend that you do listen to that podcast because it was amazingly done. And yeah, it may be triggering to you if you have certain mental health issues or you've had certain traumas. But if you don't have that, I definitely recommend that you listen to it because it's the one way I would describe it is it's infuriating when you hear that there's actually someone out there doing such egregious things and preying on people that are already vulnerable. And that's the thing, like, she's admitted that members of her team, when they post videos to YouTube, they use tags that like vulnerable people will search so they can get those people to watch the videos. And I think that alone tells you exactly who this woman is. She's trying to get people at their most vulnerable so that she can get them hooked. And I don't really think I have to explain why that's wrong, because when people are very vulnerable, they tend to be desperate and they're looking for anything that's gonna help them feel better. So to do that, you're being very irresponsible because you know that these people are in a state where they're basically willing to do anything. So if you prey on those people, you are a monster. There, I said it. She's a monster. And I hope she watches this because I want her to know how ableist and terrible the things she says to people are. Like, it's not okay to do these things, and I would say it's funny, but it's not, because it's affecting actual people and it ruins people's lives. and that's not okay. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something from it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, because that really helps me out. And also, if you have not already, please consider subscribing. I post lots of videos about disability. I post disability-friendly workouts. I post story times. I do social commentary. I do reaction videos. I do all kinds of videos, and I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers by my birthday, which is May 22nd, and so far I'm at 85, so I have 15 to go, and it would really help me out if you would hit that subscribe button and stick around for more content. I really hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye.